What's the secret to staying in love, happy together forever? I mean, you know those couples have been married 50, 60 years. They seem like they love each other more and more with each passing day. Probably know one or two of them yourself. And whenever somebody mentions them, the ladies always seem to go, oh, they're such a sweet couple, you know, they're so cute together. Well, what is their secret? In this episode, I want to tell you what I think their secret is, and then you can just go ask them for yourself if I'm right or not, okay? Because after all, they've got anniversary cards older than me. They probably know more. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Journey at Home, where we create content to inspire you to follow Jesus and make your life better. This is episode 2 of our relationship series, Happy Together Forever. So hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of this content, and then let's get rolling. In this series, we're discovering counterintuitive principles that will change your marriage for the better. Or if you hope to one day be married or maybe married again, you can practice these principles before you're married so you got the skills to stay in love, happy together forever after you're married. And we need all the help we can get, don't we? Because marriage is really hard. It's supposed to be hard. Marriage is taking two independent individuals and asking them to relate as interdependent people with interdependent habits and routines and decisions. That's tough. But that does not mean you can't have a marriage where you stay in love, happy together forever. So we're discovering 3 secrets to making that happen. In the first episode, we learned the power of making your marriage a submission competition. Today, we're going to learn the secret of redefining love. That's right, redefining love. See, most of us think of love as a noun. In other words, we think of it like an object that we either have or we don't have. Love's a feeling that just comes or goes. We don't have a lot of control over it, so we say things like, well, I fell in love, kind of like I fell in a ditch, you know, it just happened to me. I had no control over it. I couldn't help it. And then we'll say things like, I just don't love them anymore. Like somebody stole the love from us. But as long as you think of love as something that happens to you, you won't feel any responsibility if love suddenly leaves you. But when you read the accounts of Jesus' life, he never talked about love this way. He never treated it like a feeling that would come and go without your control. Jesus actually talked about love like it was a verb. It was a choice. It was something you do, not something that happens to you. Which is why when Paul came along in the first century, and he began helping all these early followers of Jesus understand what Jesus taught, he elevated love in the same way, not as something that happens or it doesn't, depending on whether we found the one or, we married the right person. No, he describes love as practical choices that we make and how we treat the person on the other side of us. For example, Paul said, love is patient. In other words, it's not pushy. Love chooses to pause and move at the pace of the other person, which is not natural. I mean, what's easy is moving at your own pace. I expect you to move at my speed, right? That's what I want. And when you don't, I get frustrated. But when I choose to love, I develop the ability to pause rather than push. I pause to match your pace of conversation, your pace of processing, your pace for when you want to make that decision, your pace for getting ready to go out. And for those of you who are dating right now, listen, if you do not see this quality in the person you're with, you better slow down and reconsider, because I can promise you they are not going to magically become patient once you say I do. Patience is a learned virtue, is a developed skill. It's a choice. Paul also said love is kind. Kindness is loaning someone your strength rather than reminding them of their weakness. In other words, it's going, I'm not going to remind you, oh, you did that again. Oh, you messed up again. How many times have we talked about this? Look at this room, No. Kindness is saying, let me help you where you're weak. It's how love responds to weakness. And wouldn't you agree kindness is not something that you either have or don't? No, we know everybody's got a choice to be kind. Then Paul goes on. He writes, love does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud. In other words, love steps out of the spotlight and lets somebody else shine. Love doesn't need to one-up someone. Love doesn't need to top their story with my story. I mean, it's not threatened by somebody else's success. It's not competing for someone else's praise or attention. Love can celebrate the success, the accomplishments of somebody else without having to bring up their own. Again, that's got nothing to do with feelings, does it? Those are actions that a person can choose to take. Then Paul writes, love does not dishonor others. Love doesn't behave disgracefully or indecently. Love doesn't behave in a way that creates regret for themselves or somebody else. Love doesn't demand another drink when they ask you to stop. Love doesn't tell that story that embarrasses them in front of others. Love doesn't make those comments that cause them to feel ashamed or belittled. Love doesn't speak disrespectfully to or about them. And love chooses to honor them and treat them as if they're the most important person in the room. Paul says love's not self-seeking. So love puts the interest of others before my own interests. It's just not selfish. I can't tell you how big this one is, because if you learn to do this, it would take care of pretty much all the arguments you have in your relationships, wouldn't it? Paul said love's not easily angered. Easily is the key word there, because everybody gets angry, but love doesn't get angry quickly. Love absorbs rather than reflects. Love goes, I'm not going to react to anger with anger. I'm going to choose to respond. I'm choosing to be self-controlled. I'm choosing to listen. I'm controlling how I respond. Then Paul writes, he says, love keeps no record of wrongs. So love doesn't keep score. You know what a scorekeeper does, right? They have a file, and every time you mess up, they go, not surprised. You did the same thing on October 3rd of last year, July 2nd, and February 12th, and they just go through the history. It's like, matter of fact, this is violation number 12. You're never going to change. But the funny thing about relational record keepers is they rarely keep a record of their own wrongs. It's just yours, right? They can't remember the last time they messed up. So if you enjoy catching your fiance or girlfriend or boyfriend or your spouse doing something, if you enjoy bringing it up to them once you find out what they've done, probably got some work to do, because God does not do that to you. Besides, you can be completely right about it and end up completely alone, but I don't think that's what you're shooting for, are you? Nobody dreams about being the loneliest, most right person on the planet. So a little grace might be in order when they mess things up. Then Paul writes and he says, love doesn't delight in evil, it rejoices with the truth. So love keeps bad things out of the relationship. If you smuggle bad things into a relationship without the other person knowing, if you smuggle, for instance, debt into the relationship, you don't tell them. Or if you smuggle pornography use into the relationship, you don't let them know. If you smuggle past or present sexual activity into the relationship, but you don't want them knowing about it. If you're smuggling a habit into the relationship that you hope they don't find out about, anything you smuggle in that has the potential to undermine the relationship and you don't tell them about it, man, that's a problem. You're not protecting. That's not loving. Matter of fact, this is how Paul concludes his writing on this. He said, love always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. That's what love looks like. Love chooses to believe the best and overlook the rest. When there is a gap between what I expected and what you actually did, love chooses to assume the most generous explanation until I get the facts. And when there are minor slights, I'm not going to hold on to them. I'm overlooking those. I'm moving forward. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. Now, when you think about those characteristics that Paul just described, you do not find feelings in there anywhere, do you? Paul doesn't talk about love like it's something that hits you when you meet the one. He doesn't treat love like a noun that, well, I either have it or I don't. No, Paul makes it clear that love is something you choose. It is completely within your control, which is why the second counterintuitive secret to staying in love happy together forever is to make love a verb. Not a noun, a verb. And this is how those couples who seem so in love after 50 years, this is how they've done it. They stopped treating love like something that was out of their control. They stopped assuming it was the responsibility of their partner to make sure they felt loved. Nope, at some point along the way, they realized love was completely in their control. That they weren't going to fall in love and just magically stay in love. It doesn't work that way. They were going to make choices that kept them in love. And it was going to be their choice to be patient and kind and selfless and honoring and forgiving that would keep them in love happy together forever. They decided to make love a verb, to choose it every single day. So let me give you a couple next steps to consider. First of all, if you are single but you hope to be married someday, and you want a marriage where you stay in love happy together forever, I just gave you your cheat sheet to know if that guy or that girl you're dating is someone who you can build that kind of relationship with. You need to look for the qualities that Paul mentioned. You need to look for them in their everyday behavior. If this is how they treat you, if this is how they treat the other people around them, then they probably got what it takes. But if they do not consistently demonstrate those qualities before you're married, if this isn't part of their character, well, they won't do it once you're married. And I know that may be hard for some of you to hear because you're dating or engaged to someone who maybe doesn't fit that description at all, and that would mean you need to end it. You need to run. And I know that hurts, but it won't hurt nearly as bad as being in a marriage with someone who doesn't know how to love you well. Now, for those of us who are married, here's what this means. We've already made our bed, right? You're committed. You're in the relationship. But even if you're miserable in your marriage, there is hope for it to get better. You just have to decide you're going to make love a verb. You have to develop the skills to love your spouse this way. So I want to encourage you to get up every morning and take 2 minutes. This is all it's going to take. Take 2 minutes and read 1 Corinthians 13. That's where this list is I just shared with you. And then ask God to help you get better at loving like this. If you will develop the ability to make love a verb, to show patience and kindness and selflessness, your marriage, I promise you, it will change for the better. And a quick pro tip, I don't think you've got what it takes to do this on your own. I know I don't. But God is eager to help you develop this kind of character. So if these qualities aren't something you do occasionally, He wants these qualities to be who you are, to be part of your DNA. So wake up every morning, read that list in 1 Corinthians 13, and ask God to help you love like this. And for those of you who are thinking, oh, wait a minute, Matt, but we hadn't talked about my spouse. You know, they're the ones who really need to change. I get that. And I'm going to show you how you can change your spouse in our third and final episode of Happy Together Forever. How's that for a teaser that sounds impossible? I'll see you then.